Daishi Hunmiller here from Warrior Concepts. Where am I? Oh, I'm in East Central Pennsylvania. That's where I am. Anyway, Warrior Concepts. We have SalesGroveMartialArts.com website. We have OnlineNinjaAcademy.com. Anyway, so welcome to another episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. And so during today's lesson, we're going to be looking at how to get our skills and techniques into muscle memory, right, as quickly as possible. Right. And that's the goal, right? We don't need training for 20 years before we can defend against somebody out on the street, right? As quickly as possible so we can use them effectively under duress and in a life-threatening situation. We're also going to take a look at a huge problem that gets in the way that ignores a fundamental part of our makeup, right? Big part of training or big problem in training. What ends up happening is it causes well-intentioned defenders and protectors to end up being what I call one-trick ponies, okay? This may ruffle some feathers, but I got used to that a long time ago. Anyway, before we continue, be sure to give this training a like, subscribe, and hit the notification button, icon, whatever the hell you have on your side, right? So you can get new lessons that I release each week and keep the ball rolling, all right? Also, don't forget to share these lessons with other people that you really care about. You want to make sure they're as safe as possible, they're skilled, successful, that kind of thing, right? So feel free to share this stuff. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. Let's start by taking a look at what I think are two sides of the training paradigm. All right, paradigm is a big word that means kind of a boundary or this realm. Okay, so two sides, right? One is learning, right, and one is responding. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Okay, so learning and responding, right? I know we've got a glare. I've had a couple of folks, even my inside guys, tell me that we've got this glare on the thing. I get it, but if I use something different, I don't know. Maybe I could use a flip chart at some point, but wouldn't really be a whiteboard then, would it? Anyway, I don't know how to make the lights not shine on this thing and have this not fall over. All right, so maybe I can adjust it just a little bit. Hopefully that made it better, and I'll just be real careful with it so it doesn't attack me in the process. Okay, so two sides to the training, right? Learning and responding, okay? So to understand not just why, right, but how these are different, but also why they're both needed, right, if you're looking to develop mastery. I've covered this in previous lessons, but I think it's important to do this before we just jump into these other things that I want to cover, right? So here's the thing. For a human being, and again, are there exceptions? Of course, right? We're looking at the general rule of thumb, right? When it comes to learning something, the average person, right, tends to be more hands-on, right? So the paradigm, right, going in this direction, right, learning is we do it, right? So it's a physical thing, and so it's a hands-on, right? If I can do it, right, and then I think about it, right, to understand it, right, to get a gist about why it works, right, or how I might use it, where the benefit is, and all that kind of stuff. And then as a process of that, right, then we have kind of an emotional response to it, okay? We feel something, right? We either like it, we don't like it. And I'm not talking about like mass or like complex emotions like happiness, sadness, depression, those kind of things. What I'm talking about is, that's pretty cool, right? We're attracted to it. We want to do more of that, right? That's pretty cool, right? Or there's an aversion kind of thing to it, right? Like smelling shit, right? It's just, you know what? Not for me, right? Or it's kind of neutral, okay? So in our Miko training, there's a lot of this stuff that goes on, right? So we either like it, we don't like it, or it's neutral. So we're either attracted, we're repulsed, or whatever, okay? But generally speaking, for most people, this is how we learn things the quickest and the easiest, most naturally, right? We do it, we think about it to understand it, and then we have an emotional response, okay? The response paradigm is kind of inside out backwards, right? When we're moving around the world and we're bumping into things, we're encountering things, talking to people, meeting people, having situations, experiences, or whatever, right? As much as most human beings would like to believe that they are logical, right, and they're in complete control of their emotions, well, the facts point in a very different direction, right? Okay. The evidence, all these studies and things like that, right? So we have an emotional response to it, right? Again, we're attracted to it, we're repulsed by it, whatever, okay? In a self-defense situation, same thing. And we'll get to that much later, but there's an emotional response to it based on what we think we know about the problem and how to solve it. Then we go into action, okay? And no amount of wanting that to be different is going to change anything unless we do a lot to, I don't know, take some mind-numbing drugs or whatever to kind of quell this kind of stuff or whatever, but then we're not really being natural, okay? So we've got these two paradigms going on, right? And so what we find is that what's missing, if we think about what's missing or what could be missing in a lot of martial arts training, right? From my experience, most martial arts training is training on the emotional impulse triggered defensive action side, right? So everybody's like doing techniques, right? They go to class, they learn something, right? They're doing things hands-on, right? They're understanding how and when and all that kind of stuff, right? And then people end up developing favorite techniques, okay? Nobody develops a favorite technique that doesn't like that technique. They're not impressed by the coolness or whatever, right? Okay, so we either like it, we don't like it, or whatever, okay? And then what you watch over somebody's career is them gravitating toward those couple of punches, couple of kicks, couple of neat little joint locks or whatever that are their favorites, okay? And the rest of it just kind of falls behind, okay? Well, we're talking about self-defense. And if we're talking about self-defense, then we have to ask ourselves a couple of really pointy questions, one of which is, what will that situation or that attack look like when it happens, right? When it comes at me, what's it going to look like? Well, the honest answer is, I don't know, right? Unless I orchestrate this thing and set it up, in which case then it's not an attack, right? Okay, it's a fight, right? And they're very, very different, right? So since we don't know what it's going to look like, we don't know what our attacker is going to look like, what they're coming at us with, how many there might be, whatever, then we also don't know what state we're going to be in when that happens. Okay? And there's some other things we'll talk about as we move along, but there's this little crux, right? And I can hear it already, right? But sensei, people do that. I mean, there's emotions in there, right? You're getting in there and you're like mixing it up and okay, but is that really true? Or is that true about certain fight stylists and certain fighters? Okay? So people, here's the thing, right? What about the people that left the dojo? What about the people that left the training? And I don't mean because they had some life-altering thing like, you know, their job changed, they moved to some other place, or they ended up, you know, having some debilitating disease or something like that. I'm not talking about those guys, right? I'm talking about they got involved in training and within 100 days to maximum 4 months, right? They're gone, right? And it happens really, really quickly, right? The statistics show that most adults drop out of martial arts training or self-defense training within the first 100 days. Okay? 100 days. Why is that? Well, they're not serious. No. How about not? How about, let me grab some of my notes here, right? How about they feel intimidated by that particular approach? Okay? How about they are bored because of that particular approach? They expected one thing, super action and all that, and they're not getting it, right? Either way, they could come away, you know, either saying or feeling like, this is just not me, right? It doesn't feel natural for me, okay? And what this really points to is that the people who stay with any given style, what's really happening is that they stay because they're a fit, right, for that particular style's way or approach, right? So uber energetic, A personality, uber competitive guys, super aggressive and whatnot, right? Gravitate towards systems where they get to jump in and mix it up. Guys that are more sedate, you know, more, I don't want to fight, you know, I will if I have to, but I want to. I'd rather, you know, whatever, right? Might gravitate towards something else, okay? strong, competitive, I want to pin somebody down, that kind of thing, right? That's how I want to win. They're going to gravitate over there. You see where I'm going with this? Okay. So we'll talk about this more shortly, but the point here is that just like with the occupations that we gravitate toward, university degrees or certain types of education we want to learn, hobbies, even spiritual pursuits and things like that, right? All kinds of things in our lives, we gravitate toward martial arts styles that fit our personality. Okay. Not a bad thing, right? It's quite natural, right? And it tends to not be a problem unless, one, the situation we're facing requires a different skill set, okay? And or the attacker or the problem that we're facing is triggering a different emotional response than we're used to having when we're mixing it up with our friends or we're in the dojo or whatever, okay? If that situation requires something different or triggers a different response in me, right, a conflict kind of gets set up, right? Again, we'll talk about this more as we move along, right? But if we're just an everyday guy, right? We're a dad, we're a mom, whatever, right? We're a law enforcement officer, security, whatever, right? We're a defender, right? Not a fighter, we're a defender, and we're looking to be well-rounded, right? To have a broad skill set that can handle more than one type, right, of situation, right? Like a sport fight or something like that, right? Or a wrestling match or whatever, right? Then we need to understand that this is about options, okay? It's about options, right? So I'm going to keep the learning and the responding words up here because I got more for that. Okay. Again, two sides of training. You know, pardon me for keep checking my notes here and stuff, but I put together like 4 pages worth of stuff for you guys that I want to make sure that I get through here, okay? And I got to get through this pretty quickly today because I have another presentation I have to do at a local university for a bunch of up-and-coming brain scientists because we're covering Mikio perspective based on brain wiring and stuff that they're working on and all that. So that's a different place to be, right? Anyway, all right, so we need we need options, okay? So options, right? But not just obvious physical fight skill options, okay? But also situational scenario-based options, okay? Which is why I'm always harping on don't just train in your comfortable little space, your backyard, your dojo, whatever, right? Get out in the parking lot between parked cars, get into tight quarters, because you don't know where it's going to happen. Right. And if you're not used to operating that way, the cool thing about the folks that are training in the Bujinkan or other systems that are comparable, I guess, right, is that we don't just have 9 schools. We have 9 different approaches to a combat scenario. And these different schools, like one was really, really good with a preferred option if you were protecting somebody else. Or so if you're in a bodyguard situation or you're in a very small space. Okay. Other ones, much bigger, like more battlefield kind of things, right? Other ones, again, everything was, if you understand them, then it becomes more situational and you can pick and choose an entire lineage because that's what it's wrapped around, right? Anyway, so again, more on that. Let me just shift my notes around here a little bit. Okay. All right. So first thing, right? Let's take a look at what we get, right? What the benefits are from these two sides of training. Again, learning and responding, okay? So learning, right, what I want you to think about is learning is classroom, right? One of my teachers used to always equate, or not you always, but often equate the learning process for martial artists like a science class in high school or university, right? So if you've ever been in one of those, right, you have classroom study where you're getting lecture and you're learning about, whether it's chemistry or biology or whatever, right? And then you have a lab component, right? You go to the lab and you work these experiments and, either way, you're going to learn something, right? So either it's going to work out and then it's going to lead to a question. The question is, okay, cool. Got that. What's next? Okay. But if I'm in the lab, I mix these chemicals together and it doesn't change the color that it's supposed to, or it doesn't bubble up or whatever it's supposed to do, right? The question becomes, all right, what happened? What did I miss? Okay. So then we go back to either way, we go back to the classroom for the next part, come back to the lab, work it out, go back, right? Okay. So what most people in martial arts do, though, is they combine these, right? Classroom and lab. But that's not the way it works, right? You can do some things in the dojo that's kind of like that, right? But what you're really looking at is the learning process. When you come to the dojo, that's learning time. That's classroom time, right? As soon as you walk out the door and you're back in life, right? If you learn a new way to walk, you learn a new way to carry yourself, balance, all these kind of things, right? That life is your lab, okay? Because in the lab, you're getting direct feedback based on what you think you know and the actions you're taking. It's either working or it doesn't. So if you learn a certain communication method, whatever, right? And you're using that and you're getting better results, it's got to be right, or at least better than what you were doing before, right? If you're getting crappy results or people look at you like, why are you trying to get me to say certain things that I don't want to say? Okay. Well, then there's something off in the way you're doing things. It's the same thing, right? Okay. If in the dojo, we're learning to manage distance, but I leave here, hop in my car, and I drive down the road. First red light I come to, I pull right up behind somebody's ass end in their car or truck, right? Not exactly managing distance, right? But if I understand, just like managing distance from an attacker, right, or a potential attacker, if I understand that just in my everyday life, if I pull up behind the vehicle in front of me, all vehicles are built this way. I pull up behind the vehicle in front of me where I can see the bottom of the rear tires touching the road surface, then I should be able to cut my steering wheel hard left or hard right to get out of that space without getting jammed up and running into this car as an impediment. Because if I need to get out of that space, I need space. Okay, I need proper space for my vehicle to move. If I can't see where the rubber meets the road, I can't get out of that space if I need to. Okay, so it's the same thing, right? If I'm jacked right up behind somebody in line, right, and I'm not giving a little bit of distance, okay, and that person just all of a sudden turns around and elbows me in the face. Okay, I get it. Part of that was they're jacked and they shouldn't have elbowed me in the face. But if I'm actually learning this stuff, I probably shouldn't be within some kind of striking distance, or I should be at an angle or whatever where them accessing me as a surprise attack should be pretty damn difficult. But most people don't do that. They take off their martial arts uniform, their superhero uniform, put on their street clothes, go out that door, and they become just like everybody else. It's kind of fucked up. Okay. Anyway, all right. So, what do I have? Okay, so learning, right? So what are we getting? And again, I'm using the rule of threes that we get from the Gyoko school. Okay, so just going to give you 3 in each one. Are there other things that you're getting? Of course, right? Okay, so in the learning paradigm, right, benefits that we're getting, right, is a structured approach. Right, we're getting a structured approach. Right, we get to work on things step by step. Right. Okay. There's no pressure, right? No pressure. Okay. Everything's controlled, that kind of thing, right? Number 2, right? But you thought that all that was on 1, 2, and 3, right? Okay. We get to work on understanding the why. I know you're gonna have to put up my crappy writing because it's just the way I write, right? Understand the why of how something works, right? I'm talking about the strategic and tactical side of things, right? It's the whole purpose behind Whiteboard Wednesdays. We're covering the strategy and the tactics. All the people that jump on this thing and think that they're going to watch a dancing monkey entertaining them while they keep on scrolling because they just want to learn some new moves, right? The comments I get from these people is, oh my God, this guy just like talked for 45 minutes. When's he going to do something? Got tons of videos on YouTube, right? I'm trying to help you put things into place so you can outthink them. I almost used a wrong term. Outthink the jackwagon that's coming at you, right? To make it give you the advantage and make it easier for you to apply your skills and techniques. Any monkey can learn techniques. Any monkey can parrot skills, right? It takes a good tactician and a strategist to be able to outmaneuver somebody whose skills and techniques might be stronger, faster, better, or whatever than yours. Okay. But you only need that one right shot delivered at the right time in the right spot. Doesn't matter how many skills he has. Okay. All right. So we get to understand the why, right? We get to study things like strategy, tactics, physiology, right? I didn't do that, sensei. Like, I saw the scrolls, right? There's no like physiology in that. No, you saw the Densho, which is a list of techniques. But if you passed by the list of, like in the Koto school, 42 Kyusho, 42 sensitive spots. If you don't think that the past masters studied physiology to the best of their ability to figure out where these weak points were, I don't know where you've been hiding. Okay. So anyway, right. And the other big thing that we get, right, is time for practice and repetition. Okay. Repetition. Might be nice if I could spell, right? Practice and repetition, right? Because we need time. We need to be doing something over and over and over again, right? To get it inside, to get it into muscle memory, to own the skill, to own the technique, so we don't have to think about it when it's time to use it. If you still have to think about where your foot goes or your hand goes or what the next piece of the move is or whatever, then you don't own that skill. You don't own that technique. Okay, it's like tying your shoes. You still have to think about, okay, rabbit goes around the tree and in the hole and you make a bow. And if you still have to think about that stuff, you don't own that skill. Okay. All right. You don't have these things on the street when you're in respond mode or response mode, right? Okay. Nobody's giving you time, right? Step by step. No, right? Too much pressure, right? Too much pressure coming at you, right? Okay. There's no time to ask why. Why is he attacking me? Why is this happening? Okay. In the moment, that's the last thing you should be worried about. Have a support group later where you can sit around and ask, why did he do that? Why did he kill my brother? Okay. Whatever. Okay. And if you haven't practiced and done enough repetition work so that it becomes instinctive, right, then I can't help. Right. Anyway. Right. So what do you get on the response side? Okay. So this is like when we're doing drills, we're working with the emotions, we're playing around with like little surprise attacks. We're bumping things up to a speed just beyond where you feel comfortable, so the adrenals start kicking in. Okay, what do you get from that? Okay, what we're getting is experience-based. Experience-based. What was the word that I used? Experience-based decision making. Okay, experience-based decisions, right? Let's see. The idea here, one, right? Okay, we have to find the way, right? This is a big principle in a lot of our lineages, or the crux of techniques within lineages, right? Find the way. You have to work out the problem, right? It's based on feel. Okay. Can you feel space opening? Can you feel space closing? Can you feel the pressure, right? To know that you can't go in that direction. Can you feel where something opens up or is about to open up, right? Can you feel their weight transitioning? That kind of thing, okay? So it's based on feel, right? So it's moment to moment, and most people would say it's instinctual, but it's right brain layered faculties kind of things operating, not left brain step-by-step reasoning faculties. It is a type of reasoning, but it's not the same. Okay. In response or drill type training, right, you get to work with the flinch response. Okay. You get to work with the flinch response. Okay. You get to work with the body's natural hardwired defense mechanism, which, by the way, that's your emotions. Okay. But the flinch response, right? Most people think of flinching as like, bringing your hands up and covering, or this kind of shock thing or whatever. But some people in certain situations, right? Sometimes the flinch response moves us back and that kind of thing to cover, right? In other times, right? It's just a quick head turn, right? Your body didn't go anywhere. Just your radar needed to find where it was, right? In other ones, right? Your flinch response sends you forward, okay? So again, we'll talk about this stuff more as we go, right? But what we have are two different methods that, while this is this whole field-based and flinch response and all that kind of stuff is more street, right? I almost missed number 3 here, right? So that's what I was talking about, right? What we're doing with this kind of training is recognizing, right, how the emotions fit, right? How the emotions fit into the equation, into the self-defense equation, okay? So and again, I'm not talking about complex emotions like happiness and sadness and glee and those kind of things. That's judgment, conceptualization, consciousness, and feeling if we were looking at the skandhas, the 5 skandhas. But what we're really looking at, if you understand the 5 skandhas from our Mikyo training, right? Form, feeling, perception, conceptualizations, and consciousness, right? Feelings, right? Feelings, right? This is that attraction, aversion, neutral, very primitive, right? R complex kind of thing going on, not, right? Oh, he makes me feel elated. If he makes you feel elated, you're not in a fight, right? Or you're a psychopath, right? Okay? I love it when they scream. Anyway, all right. So, right. So we can create drills. We can create moments that kind of reflect what's going on out there, because this is where things are going to be coming from. We're going to be in response mode. We're not going to be in, right? We don't have time to figure it out. We have to figure it out on the fly. Okay. So what people tend to do, and again, but sensei, right? We do kata and technique training, and we do randori or sparring training. Great. Okay. But let me ask you a question. When you're doing your sparring, when was the last time you did sparring? That's not the question, okay? Because people are going to go, well, last night, last week, whatever, okay? When was the last time you did sparring where somebody in the dojo could walk by, shove you, or punch you in the face once or twice, and then be pressing in so that you have to get your freaking head out of, what's the lesson, sensei, into, holy shit, I'm being attacked? Or is it most likely that here's how sparring starts? Fight. And then you see, you're both already there. Covered that in the previous episode. Was it last week, week before, something like that, right? Okay. So what we do is we create things that allow that adrenal system to start to kick in. Okay. That creates a situation where you got to get your head in the game. You have to feel what's going on. You have to kind of work things out, right? The flinch response is going to be happening, right? There's going to be these pressing emotions, okay? Again, we'll talk about some of these things as we go, right? As far as response things go, okay? All right, so so the learning side can be summed up as skills and techniques, okay? It's all about skills and techniques, right? Now, you can do a whole lot of research, right? Understanding why things work or whatever, because you're going to be studying about the physiology and the flinch response and the emotions and things like that, just like we're doing now. But 100%, it's all about how do I make my techniques and my skills work better, okay? It's all intellectual, left brain, trying to figure out how to have the advantage, okay? Everybody learns. Now, I can't say that everybody does all that extra study that you're doing or that we're doing, but everybody does the skills and techniques thing, right? It's just what the martial arts are known for, okay? The response side can be summed up as autonomic, right? That means you do something without thinking. Your breathing is autonomic, right? If you had to manually breathe every time you forgot about breathing or got caught up in your video games or whatever, you would pass out, okay? It's autonomic, okay? You have these flinch responses and things like that or functions that have to be going on automatically, right? So it's about autonomic, it's about emotional, it's about internal drivers, okay? That influence how, what, when, and why a technique fits, okay? Which everyone does not work with, right? What ends up happening, right? We'll go back to again, here's the ruffle feathers statement. We'll go back to the one-trick ponies. What I mean is they're learning one style and one approach, okay? What ends up happening is they're having a different emotional driver, right? The other person is intimidating or pushing in, or they walked into one too many punches, and now they're backing out. But the system that they learned requires that they get in there, they go get them, right? So they're trying to intellectually override the body's autonomic system and all the adrenals that are making this happen, and they're trying to force themselves to get in there. Can they? Sure. Okay. Not going to work at peak performance. And in a survival situation, you better be firing on all cylinders, because if you're not, well, then you're an accomplice to your own ass kicking. Okay. So, all right, let's jump these. I keep talking about emotions, right? So we're going to shift, right? So we're going to use the learning, right? So I can point you towards something that's about responsiveness. And if you so choose, you can work this into your training. And if you don't, then don't. Hopefully, without doing any techniques, I was enough of an entertaining monkey to keep you engaged. And if not, I don't know, change jobs or whatever, because if I'm entertaining, but you're not being entertained, then you're avoiding something else that's worse. Okay. Anyway, so you know what? I'll get rid of these things too. So we're just going to shift to the whole emotional states. Right. So I'm going to cover this in kind of three different. I'll give you three different aspects for each one. Okay. So 5 emotional drivers. Right. Actually, one is not, but I'll explain it when I get there. 5 emotional drivers. And training response options. Okay. So first one, okay. Guy comes up, threatening you, whatever. Okay. You're not bothered. Not even a little bit. Okay. And here's the difference between what I'm talking about and something else, right? Somebody's yelling, screaming, threatening me or whatever. They take a breath and I go, you done? Okay. See my body language? Okay. It's very different. He's yelling and screaming and all that, and I'm doing this kind of thing like, oh yeah, or whatever. Okay. This is more guarded. This is very different from this. This person's not worried. This person's wide open, right? That's strength and confidence. Okay. Not, this is different, right? Okay. So we can still talk back like we're absolutely confident. Meanwhile, our body's acting like somebody has us by the belt and they're pulling us away, right? Okay. So again, emotions, right? Again, it's neutral, right? We're not bothered, right? Okay. Now we're not necessarily cold neutral. It's sometimes the feeling is, you got to be kidding me. Like, seriously? So that's not really neutral, right? But what we're doing here, what this is, what our body's doing, right? And what tactics and whatnot are going to work better, right? Fit into this. So what we're doing here is we're holding our ground. Not going anywhere, but not stubbornness. Okay. Stubbornness is a negative aspect of one of these other ones. Okay. All of these elements and stuff that we work with, right, have a positive aspect, which is what most people focus on, but there's also a negative aspect. Just like there's a color associated with the positive aspect, there's also a color associated with the negative aspect. Anyway, so we, in my dojo, right, I borrowed this system from other teachers and stuff that use it. You can use it. You don't have to. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you call it, right? Just like one of my teachers used to say to somebody who would say, what's this kata called? And he'd go, I don't care if you call it Frank, Bob, or Bobby Sue, as long as we're on the same sheet of music, I don't care, right? Call it whatever you want, okay? But we call this earth, right? Just like a mountain doesn't have to be stubborn to not get out of your way. It's just there, strong in and of itself, okay? Number 2, okay? Again, the emotional state, right? We could be anxious. We could be suspicious, right? Like, what's this guy up to? I don't know what he's doing. What else do I have down here? Okay. We could be guarded, defensive, that kind of thing, right? Okay. We're just, right? That kind of thing, right? So what we're looking at here is the body. And it doesn't matter if you do this, if you take a step back, right? If you kind of guard or put some distance between them and you, what you're doing is you're creating time and distance. You're making it harder for him to get at you. So where this is wide open, this is completely closed, okay? And you're using this distance to keep him farther away, make it harder for him to get at you, okay? So we call this water, okay? It's adaptive, it's scientific, all that wonderful, cool stuff, right? Anyway, number 3, okay? We could be aggressive, right? We could be afraid, okay? Fear will often drive people forward depending on the situation, right? And we could be imperative. I have a couple of friends that are, how the hell do I, might be nice if I spelled correctly, right? Imperative, right? You know, like they keep asking you, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Right? Imperative, okay? So can we do this thing? Can we do this thing? Maybe. I don't know. What can we do this thing? If I give you my answer now, you're not going to like me forever. Okay? So we could be these things, right? But what we're doing, right, is we're taking the fight to him. Okay? We could also flip this, creating time and distance, and say that we're stealing time and distance that he needs. Right? We're preempting things. We're going to get him first. Okay? That kind of thing, right? We call this fire. So whenever people in the dojo are talking about these different things and are mentioning these modes, this is a shorthand, a single word that allows a student to know, okay, this is what I'm doing, and the emotional state that I would be in, right, is this. Right? So we might have to change certain things. We might have to team somebody up with somebody that doesn't bother them much. They might have to, work on acting and pretending, whatever. Okay? Eventually, everybody gets some other skill sets that allow them to literally change their breathing, visualize something, and there's something you can do with your hands if you want to do the full-on traditional kind of thing that allows you literally to learn how to switch emotional states, like flipping a light switch, to be the thing you need to be that will produce the results and the success you need in that situation, in that moment. Not 15 minutes from now, not a half an hour from now, not tomorrow. Man, that guy comes to me like that again. What I'm going to do it. Well, it's too late, dude. He already did and you didn't. So stop talking smack, right? Learn something so that you don't have the same embarrassment, guilt, whatever next time. Okay? All right. Number 4, all right? We could be evasive, right? Okay, what that means is anything from like just trying to get out of there, right? But it could also be changing the topic, could change the subject. I'm going to kick your ass. You know what time it is? That kind of stuff, right? I mean, just literally, just trying to move things around, right? Evasive, right? So we want to avoid. Could be even surrendering, right? Hey, whoa, dude, I don't want any trouble. That kind of thing, right? That kind of thing, right? What we're looking at here is being tricky, right? Using last second timing, right? Timing to do things like basically what we're trying to do is confuse the guy. Okay, confusion tactics, right? All over this kind of thing, right? We're just all over the place, right? We call that wind. Right? Wind is not always just light and airy. Sometimes wind is a freaking tornado, right? But anyway, right? And then the 5th one that, again, it's not an emotion the way most people think of. It's more neutral, right, than Earth is. Because Earth is still like, you're holding your ground. You're like, I can't believe you're, really? Seriously? You? Me? Today? You need a couple of months to get some training? No? Okay, right? Or anybody that's a military vet or current military, right? You know, some low-ranking guy, oh, why do I have to do this, right? Why do I have to do what you say, right? You look at him and you go, private, sergeant. Private, sergeant. Pretty sure you took an oath. If you need to go reread it, go do that. But you got about 15 seconds before I write you up or you go do the job I just gave you. There's no like, yeah, because I said so, or yanking the rank out or whatever, because that just shows a small person. Okay. So, but this fifth one, right? This is very cold, right? As in very intellectual, right? So we're analytical, right? Okay. We're going to use logic. I'm going to kick your ass. What would your mom think of that? No, I'm not knocking your mom. What would your mom think of you being this way in public? Oh, okay. Well, she's that way too. Any idea why you guys decided this was an okay way to be in life? Okay. Now, might that work? Maybe, maybe not, right? This is also creative, okay? The ability to think and communicate on your feet, okay? Make up stories, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. So this could default to more of an earth kind of thing, but I'm not holding my ground like, get past me. Okay? I'm just there, right? Because I'm asking questions. So it's a different state, okay? From a tactical perspective, right? What we're doing is we're combining all of these, right? As we need them, as natural as the fight goes, right? So this guy might be pressing in on me and I'm backing out this way and I'm backing away, he throws a punch. I avoid, realize there's an opening, and just very quickly I jump right back in there. So I go from one to the next, right? And it's the ability to shift around, because in our day-to-day lives, right? I mean, if it happens moment to moment and you're in a different state of mind, I recommend professional help. But, 10 a.m., we could have been like working on something and just needing to get this thing done. So we're super focused. We could be here or here, whatever, right? Well, more like this, right? So we're super focused, get this thing done, right? 10:45, we got it done. We're hanging out by the water cooler or jacking with our friends and all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm not worried about work. Okay, I'm on my 10-minute break and I don't cheat time or whatever, right? But at 2 p.m., right, had a call from somebody who just told me that, I don't know, something happened to my sister's car crash or something like that, right? And I'm in full on where do I go? Hopping in my car and going, right? So we shift and change, right? Based on the impulses and what's coming in from the outside world. It's just the way it works, right? And a fight is no different, right? So we call this void, which is a really bad translation when you understand what really is going on here, okay? What a better English word for this would be devoid, right? It's empty of predetermined shape, right? So it's like a ball of clay. Until you put it in an oven or a kiln and you fire it and it turns into whatever shape you made permanently, right? You can mold that, right? Turn it into something. You don't like it, crunch it back up again, right? Turn it into something else, whatever, okay? So as frameworks, right, these are combined with your techniques, right? And again, if you're still learning step-by-step techniques and whatnot, and you're full on in learning mode, then that's fine. Intermediate training is where this kind of stuff should start to come in, so that by the time you're in the advanced black belt or the advanced stages, you're this, which means you will be whatever you need to be in the moment as these things flux. And then you'll also be using these to look at techniques and go, as a strategy, that technique is a water technique because it's using time and distance, stretching this guy out to break his strength and all that kind of stuff, using this last second trimming. But since I'm playing with him, right, then I'm going to be more erratic, kind of moving around, making it harder for him to get at me, that kind of stuff, right? So more of these things can be going on at one time. One can be the mechanics of the technique, right? What it's doing. Another one could be your emotional state. Another thing could be the strategy that you're using or whatever, right? But also to black belts, upper level black belts, all of these things are operating in your technique anyway, right? So you have stability and balance. You have flow and proper timing and rhythm, right? You have that direct committed action, right? There's no wasted movement, anything like that, right? you are creative and able to adapt to whatever's going on, just like a cloud or an amoeba shifts in whatever direction it needs to go, right? And you're thinking, creating, and assessing moment by moment as things are happening, right? You're tuned in. So every technique has these, all of them going on at the exact same time. Okay. So again, lots of ways to look at these. And if that just made your skull crack, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay. All right. So anyway, where was I going with this? All right. So as frameworks, they're combined with techniques to create variations. They're used to create scenario-based options that take into account the fact that we won't feel the same against every attacker. Even if it's the same kind of attack, the attacker is going to cause us to feel certain ways, right? We're also not going to feel the same way in every situation. Okay. If I'm ill, I'm going to feel differently, right? If I'm worried about my kids, my daughter's with me or whatever, right? That may, regardless of what my normal mode might be, she's watching. Dad needs to handle this a certain way. If I'm a cop or high-end security professional or whatever, right? Yeah, doing a taekwondo jump kick to his head, probably not the thing you want seen on camera or whatever, right? Okay. So again, along those lines, they can also be trained in a way that allows us to function as other aspects of a situation dictate, like the cop with the taekwondo kick, like having my kids along, right? A dad leaving the wife and kids unguarded, right? Because the dad is just naturally aggressive and jumps into a fight to prove a point because they can't bring themselves to walk away from something because they were programmed somewhere along in their life that if they walk away from it, well, that makes them weak and whatever. Well, okay, except that you're being distracted by this guy. You jump in to prove a point, and two of his friends are snagging your family or whatever. Okay, you can beat his ass, but how are you going to feel when they're gone? Okay, so anyway, all right. So let's just kind of wrap this up. All right. So just as there are two sides to us, right? There's an intellectual side and there's a feeling side, an abstract side, that kind of stuff, right? And there's a difference between the way we learn best and we operate naturally, right, in the world. Our training needs to have these two sides to make sure we're getting the benefit, right, of both at the same time. Okay, so yes, we learn best this way, but we have to remember that we operate backwards from the learning paradigm. So we need to make sure that at some point that kind of training works into the mix. Okay, so anyway, if you're interested in doing more, there's that link again. This Friday's training, we're going to be pulling a technique or two and literally running it through the same technique and what it would look like from these different emotional drivers. Okay, so if that's of interest, hop onto this URL over here. It's $4.99 for the virtual class. You even get the recording forever, right? I get a whole bunch of people that sign up for it, and because of work schedule or time zone around the world or whatever, right? Then they're not on live, but they get the lesson anyway, right? A way to kind of back it up, right? So you can register for this week's virtual training class. Either way, right? While you're there, or just go over and jump on just the onlineninjaacademy.com part right there, right? We've got a whole bunch of distance training programs, Ninja Mind and stuff for that kind of development, personal stuff. There's some combat stuff. There's a program for how the ninja or how a warrior, different ways that warrior uses his eyes based on different mental functions and what benefits that gives them, all kinds of stuff, right? So you can jump over there, take a look at that stuff. It's really those programs are really only for serious warrior protectors. Okay, so if that's if you're just dabbling, if YouTube is good enough for you or whatever, then just ignore everything I just said. That's all fine. Okay, that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any questions or comments or whatever, you can always post them down below. So if you're on Facebook, you know how that works, right? If you're on YouTube, you can post comments down. What I'd really like to hear is like what you got out of the training, right? I mean, if you're going to put flaming stuff, I'm just going to delete it anyway. And not because it bothers me, but because I don't need that negative shit. I'm trying to help people and benefit them, right? So if that's you, find somebody else to jack off with, all right? So, but anyway, did I just say that? Oh my God. Anyway, right? But what was your biggest aha moment, your biggest takeaway, or even what's your biggest problem when it comes to training? Or, I've talk to some people that have some insecurities, right? They've attained their black belt or whatever, but they know how they operate in conflict, whether it's an argument or whatever, right? And so they have a lot of spoken or unspoken doubt as to whether they're actually going to be able to function and use what they learned in a situation because they don't do conflict well. Okay. And I get it. Right. But if you have any questions, comments, or if you just have a topic request or two, you can always post that as well. You can send that to Warrior C, Warrior, the letter C, at warrior-concepts-online.com. And I'll see if I can't get it on the training schedule and get an answer out to you. All right. That's it. Dashian Miller here again from Warrior Concepts, onlineninjaacademy.com. I'll see you either on the Friday virtual class or I'll see you next week for Whiteboard Wednesday. Stay safe. Train hard. Bye-bye.